Welcome back to part 2. So we've done our planning for our route, loaded it into the EFB, the electronic flight bag. Oh, did I just move the throttle? Hang on, let's get my flashlight out. I can't see a bloody thing. There we go. What do I do with the throttles? I want to put them in the neutral position, which is there. Right, so we now need to get this plane started because it's basically powered down and nothing's working on it. So if we have a look at the overhead panel, you can see it's got external power avail, which means it's available. But before we hit that, just a quick look at the battery. So we got 27.3 volts, 27.5 volts. So we got good volts on the batteries. So let's turn on the external power. That will come from a little APU, an auxiliary power unit, sitting outside the aircraft somewhere. Can we see it? Yeah, there it is. So that's little Jenny there is now supplying power to the aircraft. So then we want to turn on the batteries. So batteries are on. We want to turn on the crew oxygen supply. And turn on the navigation system, the internal navigation. This is a dead reckoning system. Unlike GPS, it basically knows how far forwards, backwards, up, down, left and right you've gone and can work out, as long as you tell it where you're starting from, where you currently are. It can work out you've gone forward a mile, up a mile, left 3 miles. That's oversimplifying it, but I'll come back to this because it's a really interesting piece of equipment. It involves 3 laser gyros, but we'll come back to it. So anyway, so we got that turned on. We'll turn on the strobes just to let people know the airplane's coming alive, so the ground crew can see it. We'll put nav lights on, wing lights on, arm the emergency lights, no smoking is on, seat belts on, not that there's anybody on the aircraft yet. Cabin pressure to auto, that just means the plane will work out what the pressure is at our destination and change the pressure in the aircraft to match, so we can open the doors. We got no faults on the hydraulic. Let's just turn my torch off. We got no faults on the hydraulic systems. We'll turn the heating down in the cockpits. It's probably, I tend to find that level is about 21-22 degrees Celsius, so we'll put it there. No faults. There are no pumps on the engines going, so we'll turn all the pumps on for the engines. You can actually start the engines and drive around without the pumps on. It'll still work because they're gravity fed, but when we're in the air we want to make sure we got a good supply of fuel all the time, so turn on the pumps. We'll now do tests. We'll test the APU first, the auxiliary power unit, and then engine 1 and engine 2. Whoops. So the APU is the auxiliary power unit. We're going to use that to start the engines and get us off of shore power. The other thing I want to make sure of, that the wipers are switched off. I also want to make sure the weather radar's off. The weather radar's off, and also the squawk box is off. Not the squawk box, what do you call it? The TCAS. Yeah, it's in standby. So that's in standby, that's all good. So we don't have any navigational information yet because that's still aligning. It's going to say it's going to be aligned in 6 minutes, so we can't start boarding until that's done, because the slightest vibration, well, let's cage that, the slightest vibration will stop that from aligning. It's just too bumpy, so we've got to wait until that's aligned before we can let anybody on the plane. But we got other things we can do. What we can do is we could turn on the auxiliary power unit. So now, if we come down to the ECAMs, the electronic centralized aircraft monitoring or something, you can see the bottom ECAM display, that's the top one, that's the bottom one. It's saying we got our auxiliary power unit generating 0% at 0 volts at X hertz. But when it comes up to speed, so N is the fan speed, so N% is the fan speed, EGT is the exhaust gas temperature. Oh, it's opened the flap on the back of the aircraft. On the back of the fuselage there'll be a little flap that opens to let out the exhaust gas. So once this gets up to a reasonable speed, it should start generating power. So it's probably going to be just over 50%. So here we go. So any second now I'd expect it to start generating power. You can see TAT is total air temperature and SAT is static air temperature. So they're both at about 15 degrees. That's just basically the outside air temperature. I'll get back to those later. So there we go, we got 115 volts at 397 hertz. So the APU is now functioning. We're going to need that to start the engines later, but we've got a little way to go before we get there. What we can do now is we can turn off the external power because we're generating our own power. So the plane is now fully autonomous for power. We're not using ground power because we're running off the APU. Now what we want to do, we still got 4 minutes for alignment. Let's just go back here. 27 minutes to departure. We're going to be late departing. Well, we might be. We might be. We can take away the GPU power unit. There it is, feeding plane power to the plane. We can get rid of that. We'll leave the chocks and cones on. We should be able to get the jetway on if it hasn't connected already. Let's just have a quick look outside. So the jetway's not connected. So we could say let's get the jetway connected. Yeah, there you go, it's moving in. So the jetway will come in and connect, ready for the passengers to board. So door will hopefully open. There it goes. Boom, door's open, jetway's going in. Whilst we're out here, the APU is at the back there, at the back of the airplane. I guess the exhaust gas comes out there, but there is a little flap that opens. I think it's somewhere down here. It's probably a bit too dark to see. Okay, so back to the EFB. The bridgeway's connected. That's good. What else do we need? So we're expecting 116 people. We've got none on board at the moment, and you can see this is showing us the centre of gravity. So at the moment we got zero fuel weight of 4.4 tonne, and the centre of gravity is at 27.7. When people board, that's probably going to go out to here somewhere. As long as it doesn't go outside these envelopes, we're okay. I think it's going to end up about there. So before we start boarding, we could just take a look at the MCDU, or the MCDU, which is the multi-function computerized something unit. Multi-function computerized data unit or something, I don't know. Basically it's the brains of the airplane. If we go into ATSU, AOC menu, oh, we got a message. What's the message? Oh, a load sheet. So this is an expected load and stuff, and how much fuel and centre of gravity it thinks we're going to have, and our flight number and all that. So we'll just accept that. We can request the weather whilst we're here. We'll have a METAR, which is meteorological, aeronautical something or other. So you want us to hit yes. METAR, yes. Okay, send. TAF is another form of reading the weather, but I don't know how to read TAF, so I only need to know how to read METARs. So we might have another message now. or perhaps not. Alright, we won't worry about that too much. So let's just go to flight initiate, and then we can download our flight into there. So hopefully it'll fill in the flight number, departure airport, destination airport, at the very least. Yeah, okay, alternate and estimated time en route, ETE. Fantastic. So that's all looking good. What do we want to do next? If we go into initiate and also do initiate request, it should hopefully fill this page in as well. Yay, most of it. So it hasn't filled in the flight number, so we can go into our electronic flight bag and get that. It's not that one, it's that one. Want that one? So our flight number was something like N320, yeah, N320 SB. So flight number N320 Sierra Bravo. Boom. There we go. Cost index. What's the cost index? The cost index is this thing up here. Basically it's a number between 1 and 100 or something, or 0 and 100. It's basically how aggressive the airplane can be in climbing and accelerating. The higher the number, if it was 100, the plane would get there faster and it would be a lot more aggressive. A cost index of 1 would mean it would be very laid back, so we've got a fairly laid back flight here. So we've got a cost index of 11, and we've also got a flight level of 230 or 23,000 feet. So 11, 23,000, so cost index 11, cruise 23,000, and it should fill in the temperature. So it's expecting it to be at -22°C. So that's good. So we've got our initialization set. We will come back to this on the B page actually, that's the A page. The next one, this is the fun one, flight plan. So good, it does look as though it stuck some stuff in here for us. That's where we're taking off from. That's a waypoint, that's another waypoint. Now if we go to airport, LFPG is where we're landing. But there are these discontinuities in the flight plan where it's got the airport and Hardy, but it hasn't got the bits in between. So if we go to our flight plan again and go down here, AFB, so we are taking off from 26 left and going to Hardy. So we want, I think, the Hardy SID, standard instrument departure. So if we go here, departures 26 left, I said, didn't I? And then have we got a Hardy here? Actually, is it Hardy or is it... Oh, it is, I think. Is it 1X or 5M? 1X. There we go. So Hardy 1X is our SID. Insert into the flight plan. Boom! So we're taking off on 26 left, going to KKW06, KKW09. This is just the standard instrument departure. These are important, these purple things. So we got speed and altitude. These are constraints. So at this waypoint we've got a maximum speed of 220 knots and a minimum altitude of 2,500 feet. So that one's minimum of 4,000 feet but still at 220. So the computer knows about those, it knows the constraints, which is good. We'll worry about this discontinuity later because we don't know what runway we're landing from yet. So that's the flight plan done. If the flight plan wasn't in there, we'd have to just manually type in all of these things, which is just boring. So then we go to the secondary flight plan, which is kind of like a backup. So we just copy the active and that's it. So now we've got an exact copy of the flight plan in a backup memory. So that's all that is. Easy peasy. Then we go to init B. I said we'd be turning. Oh, before I do that, how is our sun's coming up? How is our alignment going? So they've aligned. So let's get the passengers on board, or start boarding them. So load aircraft. We'll do fast time. I won't wait 19 minutes. We'll do fast time, so they'll start coming in, and we should see that moving as people get on the plane. So we've got 2 people loaded. You can see the centre of gravity moving around. So once everyone's on board, we'll come back to this. So great, everyone's coming in now. What was I doing? Init B. So we go back to init and then go right a page, and it's asking for the 0 fuel weight and the 0 fuel weight centre of gravity and the block fuel. Now unfortunately we can't fill those in yet because the centre of gravity is changing. In about 6 minutes hopefully we'll have some valid numbers for it. So I think we'll come back to that. Is there anything else we can do whilst we're waiting for them to get on board? Not really. We can have a look at the flight plan. So if I put it into plan and then zoom out, you can see it's got us taking off at Gatwick, going south over the channel, and then getting near Charles de Gaulle, where there's a discontinuity because we haven't set that up yet. But that's fine. We'll do that in the air. Whilst we're waiting for everybody to get on the plane, so we've still only got 27 people on. We're not supposed to do this, but what I'll do is I'll start the engines on the stand here. We're supposed to wait till pushback for that. But let's start the engines on the stand. So to do that, we need to obviously we need to turn the engines over. To do that, we use the APU bleed air. So at the moment it's generating power. It's generating electrical power. And if I come down to here and have a look at APU, you can see it's generating electricity. It's got a available bleed air of 29 pounds per square inch, but we're not using it. That line horizontally means it's not connected. So we do have 29 pounds per square inch of air needed if we need it, which we will. So currently the engines aren't doing anything. We'll also probably find hydraulic systems are depleted, so they're low, LO. So we got 3 hydraulic systems, the green, the blue, and yellow. The green is powered by the left-hand engine, engine 1. The yellow is powered by the right-hand engine, engine 2. And the blue hydraulic system is powered electrically. But none of those are doing anything yet. But if we power up the engines, you see on the electrical system, that's the right hand engine, engine 2, it's not doing anything, engine 1's not doing anything. So what we want to do is turn on the bleed air. So if we turn on APU bleed, that's now open, so we're now letting air flow. And for some reason, I think it's to do with the hydraulic systems, we start engine number 2 first. As I say, we'd never normally do this at the gate, but just to speed things up. So we'll turn that into the start position, lift that into the on position, the start. So now if we look at ECAMs, you can see the N2, which is the rear blade, the core of the engine, is starting to rotate, so it's at 20%. And then N1, which is the blade at the front, is starting to speed up. So we should be able to see that. Oh, a bit of a bad angle. Well, that's engine 1, sorry, engine 2. There you go. So you can see engine 2 is spinning up. And when it gets to about that, clonk, you hear that clonk? That's the engine turning off the bleed to itself. So that engine is now self-sustaining. That engine is now up to speed and powering itself, so it doesn't need the bleed anymore. So we can now use all that bleed air for engine number 1, which is on the left hand side. So now engine number 1 the N2 fan, the core of the engine, is getting up to speed. That's connected by a crankshaft and some gears to the N1, the big fan at the front that you can see. And again, when that gets above like 52%, something like that, it should have enough power to sustain itself, and then it will go clonk to close the bleed valve, and at that point we will be able to turn off the bleed air and shut down the APU. So any second now, clonk, there we go. That's the engine up to speed and on its own power. So now we can turn the bleed air off, and because the plane is now, if we have a look at the electrical systems, if we look at the electrical systems, we can now see that generator 1, which is basically engine 1 and engine 2, are both generating electricity. Fantastic. So that means we can save a little bit of power by turning off the APU. And now we got no external power, we got no APU, all the electricity is being fed off of the two engines. Beautiful. So how are we doing for boarding? Oh, we got everybody on board. Boarding complete. Fantastic. Okay, so now we can put in the centre of gravity. So it's right on the line. So it's going to be 55.9, 29.3. Where are we? In it. B. So zero fuel weight, was it 55.9? Whoops. 55.9 stroke 29.3. 29.3. Ah! Okay, so let's put it in for our zero fuel weight and our centre of gravity. So that then helps the computer assess what trim to put on the plane, how much acceleration we're going to need, and all of that jazz. Oh, talking about acceleration, the other thing we want to do is go to takeoff. And what are we taking off from? What did I say we're taking off from? We are taking off from 7 left. So we're taking off 7 left. It's not dry. It was raining last time I looked. We'll say it's wet. We'll load the load sheet that we got from the McDo earlier, and we'll synchronise it with the weather. And then if we hit calculate, the EFB will then calculate our V1, VR and V2 speeds. So they're very important. They're basically, V1 is the sort of like takeoff speed at which we can no longer abort the takeoff. So once we hit 115 knots, we can't abort the takeoff. We got to take off. VR is the rotate. That's when we actually pull back to get into the air at 135. V2 is the minimum departure speed or climb speed, which again is 135. So 115, 135, 135. So we need to put that under performance. So 115, 135. I'm getting double clicks all the time, which is annoying on the keyboard. 135. Boom. So there we go. So V1, VR, V2 set. We also need to give it a flap setting and a THS. So if we go to flaps, it's flaps 1, which is normal, with a trim of up 0.1. So 1 up 0.1. 1 up. Oh, this is going to get old. Up 0.1. So flaps 1, trim of up 0.1. Flex temp, this has got to do with how efficient the engines go on takeoff. 68 degrees. I don't fully understand it, to be honest, but I just do what the computer says. So 68 degrees. So that up 0.1, the trim, that's to do with the zebra wheel thing here. So you can see it's got like one up there to 0.1. You can actually move the trim, but we'll let the plane do that. Oh, I can take that out of start, put it back to normal. So the ECAM's showing us our tyre temperatures now, which is important, because if we had just landed and doing a turnaround, they might be really high. But they're sitting at ambient temperature at 15. So that's good, but if we had just landed and done a fast turnaround, if they're over 300 degrees, we wouldn't be allowed to take off. I don't know if this plane is fitted with... I don't think this plane, there's normally an extra button on here for fans on the wheels, on the brakes, but this plane isn't equipped with it, so we're not going to worry about that. Okay, so we have got our takeoff set, we've got the flight set. Oh, we should probably check our fuel. What I normally do is go to the flight plan and look at the last airport. So even when we land, the estimated fuel on board, it's just under 2 tonne, which is plenty. But we'll be carrying a lot of extra fuel to get to alternates, and you should always carry half an hour extra fuel in case of emergencies. So we'll have extra fuel to get to alternative, half an hour fuel for emergencies, and also 15 minutes for contingencies. So we got plenty of fuel. So yeah, so I think we're all set. So I might break it here and then we'll taxi out. Oh, one thing I do want to check. Let's get this armrest out of the way. Check that sweet oxygen. Okay, oxygen, check. Is it still raining? No, it's not. Good. So we are fully loaded, ready to go. We can ask for pushback and get taxi to the runway. So before we do that, I will just stop the video and pick it up again in part 3.